Aloha Kako, welcome to the hearing for the Committee on Agriculture and Food Systems. Today is February 14th. The time is 9:18 a.m. and we are convening in room 325. Today we have with us Vice Chair Kahaloa and Rep. Russo. Before we get started, I'm going to go over some brief housekeeping rules. There is a 2-minute time limit per testifier in order to allow as many testifiers to testify as possible. Please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is completed. Zoom chat function will only allow you to chat with technical staff. If you are disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. In the event of a catastrophic network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision-making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Lastly, please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from hearing without the ability to rejoin. That being said, our first agenda item is HB 1850, relating to the Agribusiness Development Corporation. First testifier we have is ADC.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, Representative Russo. We stand on our written testimony in strong support. Not only does this build the Hawaii brand, it also provides a very important revenue stream for our ag producers, and it allows them to sell directly to the public, value added, which is actually a fantastic opportunity to interact and do their own marketing research. So it allows them to expand their offerings. Again, we stand in strong support. I'm here for any questions.
Mahalo. Next, we have HFB.
Morning, Chair, Vice Chair, Representative Peruso. I'm Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. Before we discuss our testimony, happy Valentine's Day. Did I do that right? I don't even know how to do that. I'll try it again. Anyway, you have our written testimony in support. We just want to summarize by saying agritourism done right, done properly, done legally is part of agriculture. So we agree that this ADC should be allowed to do this. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is TJ Karuzma.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, Representative Peruso, TJ Charisma here, and I do not support this change. I stand on my written testimony and add this comment. Until you have seen the families that have been destroyed by the lack of leadership, lack of foundation that ADC sorely lacks, until you have seen the families, again, who have lost loved ones because of the ADC's lack of everything in our community. We have seen families destroyed. They cannot even manage the properties and the lessees that they have now. Adding this definition, enabling them to grow agritourism would be just another stab in the heart and the families in our community. For these reasons, among others, I stand and do not support this definition change or addition. Thank you. I remain available for questions.
Mahalo. Next testifier, actually that was the last testifier indicating they would be present. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 1815? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Go ahead, Rep. Russo.
Wendy Gady with ADC.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm not sure you've had a chance to see the written testimony, but there are multiple submissions that are in opposition. Primarily, it looks like from Whitmore Village, which is part of my district. And I'm wondering if before your board approved this measure, because I imagine you had to get approval from the ADC board, if there were any attempts to reach out to the community, to go to the neighborhood board, to convene a meeting in Whitmore Village, to talk to some of the families that have been affected by over the long term, prior to your tenure, that have been affected by ADC in that community. So did you have an opportunity to do that work or not?
So short answer is I've not seen the testimony. I have asked repeatedly to be on the agenda for the neighborhood board, but have not been included. But I would love to have had that opportunity, and I will do my homework in talking to some other people outside of the board with your help.
Okay, I think also I'll just mention for your edification that most likely one of the concerns has to do with the fact that Whitmore Village is so tiny and there is one road in and out. And if you're going to bring big buses of tourists in, which, I mean, that's been the model for tourism and agritourism, that will deeply impact that community. So I would ask that you go back to the drawing board, do the work with the community, and then come back to us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? I have a quick question. Do we have TJ on still?
Thank you, I am available.
Hi, mahalo for making time to testify. Relating to your testimony, is it based on agritourism in Whitmore, or is it just with ADC alone? With the issues you brought
It's
up?
actually, I'm sorry?
With the issues you stated earlier?
It's actually with both. ADC has not fulfilled, as you saw in my testimony, ADC has failed in more than, multiple ways to do what they were given, what their responsibilities were. And allowing them to bring agritourism under their umbrella only leaves, it doesn't give us any confidence that ADC can manage that type of enterprise, because they've not been able to manage their lessees, especially those in Whitmore. Very recently, as last week, they already had a lessee in Whitmore that was dragging asphalt out from their property on the road in the middle of the night. This has happened before, and again, we have no confidence that ADC can take on the responsibilities
Thank
of
you.
having agritourism.
So I guess my question was mainly, is there agritourism currently in Whitmore and Waiwa, and is ADC failing in that role as doing agritourism?
There is not agritourism
Okay, thank you.
in Whitmore.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions, members? Thank you for being here, TJ. We're gonna move on to our next agenda item, HB 1937, relating to the Department of Agriculture. First testifier we have is Attorney General.
Good morning, Chair Gates, members of the committee, Kelsey Nagata, Deputy Attorney General, providing comments on HB 1937. The bill as drafted may be subject to challenge because the laws involving state lands should be general laws. We have provided wording to amend the bill in our testimony, which may remedy the issue. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is DOA.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and Committee. The Department respectfully opposes this measure and would like to add a suggestion that instead, could we or this bill be turned into grant funding for those parcels? And in our testimony, it explains further details why we think that's the better option, but we are here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is HFB.
Thank you, chairs, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You have a written testimony in support. Again, we've talked about the need for water and how critical it is for success of farmers and ranchers. This is dealing with specific farmers in Panaewa and Pahoa. Previously, we've come before this body asking for an exemption. Not because we don't want to have environmental impact statements, but just because of the challenge to these small farmers to afford the cost and the length of time. So now we're coming in asking for it to be funded by the state. We do hear the Department of Agriculture's suggestions, and we are open to that. Again, we're just trying to find a way that we can get the farmers the water that they need in order to be successful. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony. Noting that was the last testifier indicating they would be present or on Zoom. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on HB 1937? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions? Seeing none, we're going to move on to our next measure, HB 2130, relating to sustainable food systems. First testifier we have is DOA.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Sharon Hurd, Department of Agriculture. The Department of Agriculture supports and offers comments. The working group is a great idea. We do need your voices. The testimony and comment recommends that we have agricultural operators represented in the 11-member working group and request legislative guidance in defining and describing how farmers, ranchers, aquaculturists, and producers, floriculturists, will be at the heart of the plan to achieve a more sustainable food system. The department appreciates that the discussions will add content to the Hawaii Farm Bill currently in development. We are cautiously optimistic that the efforts of the working group will result in a measurable, science-based, and functional plan that will provide the state's highest priorities of increasing the economic viability of existing agricultural operations and assist in the establishment of new ones in direct support of increasing local food and self-sufficiency and export. Subsequent to this bill, there's been other sustainability bills that have included a position for a sustainability person. That position will support sustainability in general. In addition, this working group, the value of that would be about $70,000 for an SR 24. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is UH.
Aloha, good morning. Phyllis Shimabukuro Geyser for University of Hawaii CTAR on behalf of Interim Dean Anya Vichorik. The department stands on its written testimony in support, and we defer to the Department of Agriculture regarding resources identified in the bill. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Next testifier we have is HFB.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Ryan Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We're in strong support of this measure, and we stand ready to assist by either being members of this or assisting the department in identifying the members that they had discussed in their testimony. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Food Industry Association.
Thank you, Chair. Lauren Zerbel on behalf of Hawaii Food Industry Association will stand on our testimony and support. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Okay, noting that was the last testifier indicating they would be present or on Zoom, is there anyone else wishing to testify on HB 2130?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Hunter Hevelin here on behalf of Hawaii Farmers Union. We'll stand in support of this measure when offering comments. This, similar to previous year's efforts, seems to have taken a broad swath approach to pursuing manifold goals for our food system. And I think similar to the testimony of the Department of Agriculture, we would like to see producers at the heart of this effort. I believe as written, there's a number of very nuanced and, as I can say this as an academic, jargony statements that are currently the Senate and House would be in charge of identifying people with these very nuanced skill sets, which to me seems rather difficult. I would propose that, like many other planning processes, we could just strike a number of this language and include the recommendation that it center producers at the heart of a plan and that it engage a robust planning process without having to delineate exactly what that process entails and leave that either up to a position that's housed within the department or should they be subbing out that work to RFP to a planning firm. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Noting that was the last person indicating they'd be Testifying, anyone else wishing to testify on HB 2130? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to our next measure. Oh, members, any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we're going to move on to our next measure, HB 2134, relating to agriculture. First testifier we have is DOA.
Hunter's Tall. Good morning. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sharon Hurd, Department of Agriculture. This bill was started off as an admin bill for one position. The bill that appears to be moving forward is this bill from the public that is for two positions. We strongly support, and what I'd like to do is combine the two and note that we are asking for a total of three positions, total of $300,000, of which will be realized, the return on that would be tenfold. It is an amazing opportunity right now with the current administration to move forward with federal grants. The current Green administration has even set up a separate federal task force, federal grant task force that they're telling us, hey, Sharon, look at this bill, look at this grant, look at that grant, and we just don't have the capacity to go forward with it. We'll go for the formula ones that we know we can get if we just apply for, but we have no capacity to go for the competitive ones, even though we know we could probably get it. So strong support. Thank you for allowing us to testify on this measure.
Mahalo. Next testifier we have is Ulupono Initiative.
Good morning, Chair Gates, Vice Chair Kaloa, members of the committee. Micah Munikata here on behalf of the Ulupono Initiative. We stand on our written testimony in strong support of this measure. You know, since the pandemic, there's been quite a bit of federal funds that have been floating around. In talking to a lot of our federal delegation, there's a lot of strong work that's been done to allow for us to go out and seek and get this money. However, capacity remains an issue within the state. You just heard from the director some of the capacity issues they have to just go out and get some of these funds that are just completely set up for the department to go get. But they don't have the ability to do it because they don't, I mean, to be quite honest, a lot of their staff are working 4 jobs already. So creating this capacity in-house is going to be extremely helpful. The ask is for 3 positions at $300,000. We do appreciate the legislature's movement on this last session. It was a trust-funded position at $70,000 more or less, and unfortunately, when it's trust-funded, you don't take into consideration fringe. So you're actually asking someone to take on this position at $29,000 a year. You're not going to attract talent with that kind of funding, unfortunately. So this positions are general funded at $300,000, about $100,000 per person. That way we can actually attract some of that talent. I just want to talk about some of the opportunity. $300,000 invested into these positions, and as Sharon said, there's grants that are available at roughly $14 million right now for the department to go get. That's nearly 50% return on investment when you invest that $300,000. I will say that Ulupono's been doing a lot of work for about 10 years now, investing into the private sector around some of this grant funding, working with folks like the Farm Bureau, the Kohala Centers, the Wahoo Ag Conservation folks. And we've invested about $1.4 million over 10 years. That has brought in $140 million in return for the private sector. All of this money going to our producers. That's 100 times return on investment. There is so much money out there for us to go get, and we just need to create some capacity within the department to just go get it. Again, the money's there. We just got to create this capacity in-house to go get it. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is HFB.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We are in strong support of this measure. In fact, this is a Farm Bureau priority measure. Extremely important. You heard the chair at the Department of Agriculture and Ulupono talk about needing capacity at the department in order to implement this program. I'd like to talk about capacity at the farm and ranch level. 6,569. Get used to remembering that number, because we were going with 7,328. The Census of Ag numbers for 2022 have come out, 6,569. I believe that's almost 760 farms and ranches less. 2022, currently now, our number is going to be 6,569. I think everybody remembers 7,328. That's a 10.3% decrease. So measures like this to help with capital, to help build capacity, to help maintain your capacity is critically important. So we are in strong support of this measure. 3 positions would be great, 2 positions, not as good. 1 position, we take. Let's go for that 3 positions. Let's give the department the appropriate capacity and resources so that farmers and ranchers can have the appropriate capacity for everything we need here in Hawaii. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony. Next testifier we have is Local Food Coalition.
Good morning, Chair Gates, Vice Chair Kahaloa, members of the committee. Myung-o here on behalf of the Local Food Coalition in support of this measure. I think the 2 testifiers prior to me already said it eloquently. It's an opportunity to draw down federal funds, grants, and have the dedicated personnel. So we're in strong support. Thank you.
Mahalo for your testimony. Noting that was the last testifier indicating they would be present. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 2134? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none. We're going to move on to our next measure, HB 2137, relating to the Hawaii Farm to Food Bank program. First testifier we have is DOA.
Good morning, Dexter Kishida, Deputy at Hawaii Department of Agriculture. We stand in strong support of this. During the pandemic, I've worked with many of you on the line helping our communities, and that really was my aha moment, that these farm to food bank programs have the multiple win approach. And so as the department, we strongly support, but do request one clarification. And regarding the eligibility of the program, the suggestion is to strike emergency feeding organization. It's a little vague, and so leave it as food bank. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Attorney General.
Good morning, Deputy Attorney General Travis Moon providing comments. We provided comment in our written testimony and suggest including an explanation as to why the Hawaii Farm to Food Bank program cannot be implemented with general funds and must utilize a special fund. I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Food Bank.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Amy Miller here on behalf of the other HFB, Hawaii Food Bank. We stand in very strong support of this measure. The Farm to Food Bank program has really proven to be a win-win-win since the pandemic. When we first started this program in partnership with other HFB, we've been able to invest over $10 million in local agriculture supporting farmers and distributed almost 8 million pounds of fresh, healthy, local food to our community. Much of that was on COVID-related federal funds, so as those have wound down, we've had to really shrink the program. Right now, we're purchasing about 25,000 pounds a week, getting out into the community, but we could do much, much more. And if it's okay, I'd just like to share a quick note with you guys that we received from one of our participants in a program we do in partnership with YNI Comp, just to understand the impact that this has on the people that participate. I have 3 kids and work 2 jobs and do not qualify for food stamps. After monthly expenses for rent, gas, electric, and diapers, it leaves very little for food. I go to food banks to make ends meet. Most food banks, however, do not have fresh produce. This program literally changed our lives. It changed the way we eat. I made so many amazing dishes using the fresh vegetables and produce we were gifted with. I have truly never felt healthier. I made smoothies for my family every day. My babies would eat poi and cereal every morning. My middle son finally gained weight. Words will never be able to express how grateful I am. After being denied any assistance for so long, finally I qualified for some sort of help, and it's just the biggest relief to have the help be such healthy and wholesome foods. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I hope this program continues or others like it because it has really made such a huge difference in my family's health and well-being. Aloha. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for sharing that testimony. Our next testifier we have is Hawaii Public Health Institute.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Nate Hicks with Hawaii Public Health Institute, standing in support. Fresh fruit, fresh produce is very important for the health of folks, and as we've heard, it's in high supply and in high demand and in low supply. This provides an opportunity for folks in need to get the produce that they require to live a healthy life. Without this, they just are not going to have it, right? We know that about 1 in 6 people are facing hunger. I know that they're feeding 150,000 people a month, and so this is a huge portion of our population. That would be 5-6 people today, depending on fresh produce from a program like this that we can help. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Kaiser Permanente. Okay. Next testifier we have is Ulupono Initiative.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Micah Munikata here on behalf of Ulupono Initiative. We have a lot of great measures being heard this morning. This is one of the tops for us. As described, a lot of great work done during the pandemic, a lot of strong connections made to community feeding needs and our local producers. We need to find ways to continue to meet our food insecurity across our communities, but also finding additional markets for our farmers. I think it's extremely important if we're serious about the health and well-being of our society, as well as the future of our agricultural producers. This kind of program hits on both. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is HFB, Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Micah's tall, too. Vice Chair, members of the committee, Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. I'd like to adopt the words of all the previous speakers if they were my own. They said it all. This is a great program. It is a win-win. Provides another market for our farmers and ranchers, but also provides fresh, locally grown products to those most in need. I do want to clarify about the emergency feeding organizations. It is in the bill, however, there's no definition. There is a definition similar to the definition of food banks in Title VII United States Code. The food bank is 7501 parentheses 5. Emergency feeding organizations is 4. Now, let me be clear. We're not talking about not including them, but again, there's not a lot of money. Let's go with the credible organizations, the large ones, like the Hawaii Food Bank. Let's go with those that are participating in TFAP. And the Hawaii Food Bank supports 200 partners, which are your emergency feeding organizations. So again, I don't think we want hundreds and hundreds applying for the funding. They will get the funding directly or indirectly, however you want to categorize it, from the Hawaii Food Bank, from the Maui Food Bank, from the Hawaii Island Food Basket, and from the Kauai Food Bank. So again, it's not that we're trying to leave out these groups. They will receive the support, the local products, but it will be through these larger organizations that participate in USDA's TFAP program. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Food Industry Association.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. We will stand on our testimony in strong support. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Well, we have a ton of testimony in support. Noting that was the last testifier indicating they would be present. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 2137? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. Hunter Hevelin here on behalf of Hawaii Farmers Union. Would like to extend a mea culpa for the inclusion of erroneously the emergency feeding organizations in an earlier draft of this bill in the interest of the chair, as well as with the partners that we have across the state. We had explicitly included emergency feeding organizations and cited the code that Brian referenced. However, in subsequent discussions with the Department of Agriculture, food banks, and a number of these feeding organizations themselves came to the conclusion that the process would actually be much easier streamlined and a lot easier to administer, and hence not actually incur any additional administrative costs, which you may have noticed the department is not currently asking for the program. And so in light of that streamlining, we do also support striking emergency feeding organization language from this bill and stand on the grand testimony of everyone who's spoken before. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 2137? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions? Vice Chair Kahaloa.
Question for Hawaii Food Bank.
Hi.
Thank you. Just to clarify the striking of the emergency feeding organization, so funding would funnel through the food banks across the state, and then in an emergency, that could get delivered out to other feeding organizations via that vehicle. So as an example, Chef Hui, who provided a lot of feeding support on Maui during the wildfires, they could receive funding via the vehicle of the food banks. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's actually how the food bank works. So we don't do a lot of direct distribution. Almost all the food goes out through a partnership with about 200. We have about 225 partner organizations, emergency feeding organizations. My Food Bank has about 187. So the food goes free of charge to these emergency feeding organizations right now and then distributed into community. So absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none. We're going to move on to our next measure, HB 2329, relating to rose ring parakeets. First testifier we have is Attorney General. Okay, no. All right. DOA. 2329.
No.
Yeah, I'm just going to put you on the spot. Go ahead.
Thank you. Dexter Kishida, Department of Agriculture. Rose ring parakeets have been a challenge both not only on Kauai, but on Oahu as well. On Kauai specifically, they did have some work done during the pandemic that did show effective, but may not work when the population is out and about. It's great to have actually background music while doing this a little bit. So with this bill, we do stand in support of this because we know it's a growing problem to control. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is DLNR.
Aloha. Way to wing it. Good job. Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Chelsea Arnott on behalf of the Department of Land and Natural Resources. We stand on our written testimony in support of this bill and recognize the issue and the impacts on Kauai of rose ring parakeets. And just want to also expand upon that. We also have an issue here with these birds here on Oahu and wanting to expand that pilot project to include Oahu. In addition to that, we can use existing management tools to do some work in this pilot project, but there's really need for more research on long-term management tools that really hasn't been recognized or done yet. So appreciate the opportunity to testify on this measure. Mahalo.
Thank you. Next testifier, HFB.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair. Members of the committee, Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You have a written testimony in support, and we did only reference Kauai, because we didn't want to take the $150,000 away from Kauai, because that's where money has gone before, and it's a problem there. But as the previous testifiers mentioned, there is a huge problem here on Oahu. Let's not minimize the extent of the problem. We have it right across or right next door at Iolani Palace. But if you really want to see the extent of the problem, go to Beretania and Punahou in dust, and you will see thousands and thousands. Again, another pest, another challenge for agriculture and environment. These parakeets love fruit crops, love tree fruit crops. And so they are in central Oahu, they are in Pearl City, they are in town, they're all over the place. And like we've seen with other invasives, if we don't address them, they'll just keep expanding their area, and we will have a larger and larger price tag to try to control. So again, we don't want to take away from Kauai. This is a bill specific to Kauai, but if there is funding, absolutely. Let's look at Oahu also. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony. Noting that was the last testifier indicating they would be present or on Zoom. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on HB 2329? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Seeing none, we're going to move on to our next measure, HB 2335 relating to agricultural loans. First testifier we have is DOA.
And I even brought backup for this one. Thank you very much, Dexter Kishida, Deputy at Hawaii Department of Agriculture. We strongly support this bill. This is a great way to make capital available to our farmers by making a static rate and at 4% for most things and 2% for emergencies, which really is an amazing rate to offer our farmers. We stand ready to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is HFB.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We are also in support. Again, going from 7.5% down to 4% is a good thing. 2% for emergency loans. You see in our testimony how many different emergencies that our farmers and ranchers have to deal with. I'm coming up here to ask the committee to consider SB 2431, which is the Emergency Loan Revolving Fund. I don't believe there is a House companion. So that bill is still alive in the Senate, and that would go along with this to create that fund, kind of a dedicated fund for emergency loans. That particular fund is for emergency loans. So we would ask that the committee consider hearing that measure if it does cross over. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony. Noting that was the last testifier indicating they would be present or on Zoom. Anyone wishing to testify on HB 2335? Seeing none. Members, any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to our next measure, HB 2590, relating to food security. First testifier we have is DOA.
Thank you. I think a lot was said already, but Dexter Kishida, Deputy Hawaii Department of Agriculture. We stand in strong support, and a lot has already been spoken about regarding farm to food bank programs. One thing I would like to really enhance is that the lessons we learned during the pandemic were not only the win-win of supporting our community and our farmers, but the long-lasting relationships that people made with their food. I think Amy Marvin mentioned from the food bank that. But as they developed some brand loyalty almost to local food, and I've personally heard some testimony or responses back saying that they've carried on buying local meats because they were used to it and had it during the pandemic. So we hope to continue that and building more local brand loyalty. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Oha.
Aloha, Chair Gates, Vice Chair Kahaloa, and members of the community or the committee. My name is Kaylee Enixon, Public Policy Advocate with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and we will stand on our written testimony in support. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Food Bank. HFB. Mahalo. Next testifier we have is Kaiser Permanente.
Aloha, Chair. Jonathan Ching for Kaiser Permanente. We'll stand on our written testimony and support. Thank you.
Mahalo. Next testifier we have is Ulupono Initiative. Mahalo. Next testifier we have is HFB.
Thank you, Chair. Same testimony as a previous bill without the reference to the emergency feeding organizations, which is not in this bill. Strong support.
Mahalo. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Food Industry Association.
Thank you, Chair. We'll stand on our testimony and support. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Public Health Institute. Thank you. Noting that was the last testifier indicating they would be present. Anyone wishing to testify on HB 2590, please? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 2590? Seeing none. Members, any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, seeing none. I'm going to pass on the gavel to my vice chair for a few bills. Chairman in training.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to HB 2617. First testifier is the Attorney General's Office.
Good morning, Kelsey Nagata, Deputy Attorney General, providing comments on HB 2617. Just brief comments that the bill does not presently contain wording specifying whether the members of the committee should serve without compensation. We include potential wording that could be added in our written testimony. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier is Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Thank you so much. Dexter Kishida, Hawaii Department of Agriculture. We stand on our comments, giving some background onto the prior advisory committee. The department strongly supports aquaculture and looks forward to developing a very robust industry. And it is going to take the general knowledge and wisdom from the industry to develop it. So we look forward, and as we do now, to continue to working with them. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Next testifier is HFB, Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony and support.
Thank you. We had 2 testifiers in support, 2 with comments. Is there anyone wishing to testify in this measure? Any questions from committee members? Seeing none, we will move on to the next measure, HB 2619. First to testify is DLNR.
Aloha, we'll stand on our written testimony and support.
Thank you. Next, we have Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sharon Hurd, Department of Agriculture. This is very important to the department. We strongly support it. The bringing in of germplasm is so important to the farmers. I mean, right now, as we speak, papaya farmers do not have the papaya ring spot virus resistant seeds. They're starting to use F1s and F2s and F3s, which we all know, by the time you have an F3, it no longer looks like a papaya. So we need to provide them the clean seeds that they need to continue production. The pandemic, recovering from that, taught us that, you know, in order to regrow, in order to restart, you really need the germplasm. The University of Hawaii at CTAR has provided us with clean plants that are ready to go. Banana bungee top virus resistant. I mean, we need this bill urgently. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ulupono Initiative. Thank you. Next testifier is HFB.
Sharon Short. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You have our written testimony and support. I don't think we need to spend much more time after that marathon Monday hearing where we had about 10 invasive species bill. I think the Farm Bureau said everything we really need to say. This is a priority of the Farm Bureau. This is one of our priorities. In fact, this is our top priority. Invasive species is our top priority. Thank you to Representative Peruso providing the numbers that I talked about in 2002. We said $50 million was the LRB report. That is up to $90 million now is the estimate. So our suggestion, we do have a suggested amendment in the blanket appropriation on this bill. Let's go ahead and put that $90 million in there, or at least in the committee report, so that it is known on how much is needed. Again, $90 million is today's price tag. I don't know what tomorrow's price tag is going to be. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. We have 19 testifiers in support, but no others to testify at this time. Is there anyone else who has additional testimony? Any questions from committee members? I will ask the Department of Agriculture one quick question.
Vice Chair?
The Hawaii Farm Bureau gave a number for the blank appropriation, and we don't see a necessary budgetary number in your testimony. What number does the department need to see to support this bill and the initiatives to fund biosecurity measures for the department?
We did have a bigger number that included CIP, but I will definitely stand by Brian's number. There's no way I'm not taking that number. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next measure, HB 2705. First to testify is Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Dexter Kishida, Deputy at Hawaii Department of Agriculture. The department respectfully opposes this bill, and there's a few reasons. One, we do have a stopgap, or the necessary check and balance, and that's our Hawaii Board of Agriculture. They are the final decision maker on a lot of the final dispositions of our leases. The other piece I would like to point out is that while it may seem that there's a private entity profiting off of state lands, for many of our farmers, that lease sale or that is the exit plan and only retirement that they're seeing as they're leaving the industry. The other part, if we're trying to encourage growth and reach that 30% or 50% for just our state institutions to buy local and doubling food production, then we've got to build the environment that these farmers can actually grow out of our ag parks. And this is one mechanism that we can do that. And then when there is a case that it looks like there is excessive profit being made, that is when our board steps in. We'll be here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to testify is HFB.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You have a written testimony, and we are also respectfully opposing. We don't see a need for this bill, and as you heard the department testify, we believe there are authorities in place already to take care of those bad actors. The legislature just approved the lease extension for our farmers last year. This goes kind of counter to that. Some of our farmers have succession plans. Again, why are we trying to restrict and somewhat punish farmers with track records of success? Again, when we talk about the need for more agricultural lands and folks on the waiting list, that's why we are advocates of the state identifying and having more ag parks so that we can get more of the farmers on the land. But we shouldn't be looking at good farmers and trying to get them off of the land. You heard the deputy talk about retirement. Farmers sell their leases and they try to recover all the investments that they have put into that land, into that lease, because they can't take it out with them. So again, we believe there are protections at the Board of Agriculture, and if there's any abuse, then it's the responsibility and kuleana of the board and the Department of Agriculture to address that. So again, we respectfully oppose this measure. We think it's unnecessary. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. We had 2 in support of this measure, 3 in opposition. No comments. Would anyone else like to testify in this measure? Any comments or questions from the committee? We will move on to the next measure, HB 2754. First to testify is the Attorney General.
Good morning, Chair Gates, Vice Chair Kahaloa, Deputy Attorney General Candace Park. We have a concern regarding Article 10, Section 6 of the state constitution, which can be remedied by including language identifying this bill as a matter of statewide concern. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Next to testify is OPSD.
Aloha chairs, vice chair, members of the committee. My name is Danielle Bass. I'm the state sustainability coordinator from the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. Our office strongly supports this bill. In fact, we find this heartwarming on Valentine's Day, since this directly correlates to our charge as urban planners to incorporate more sustainable development and climate resiliency for Hawaii's benefit and future. We do request one friendly amendment. There's a little worry and fear of missing out. So if you could please incorporate the state sustainability coordinator in this plan-based working group, that would be great. Thank you so much. Mahalo.
Thank you. Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sharon Hurd, Department of Agriculture. Oh, and Chair, didn't see you come back. This, similar to OPSD, we find this bill very heartwarming because plant-based building materials, if we can do import replacement and replace it with locally grown plant-based building materials is a pathway for invasive species. We can certainly curb that pathway by start producing within the state. We support this measure, but we have a number of comments. Besides import replacement being very important to us, there is a variety of bamboo that is, bamboo is great for building materials. We see it all over the world, but there is a variety that's the running variety. So our caution is that every plant that comes in for this purpose should be run through our plant quarantine so that we can determine if it's an invasive or not. And that's important to us, as well as including them on the PBBM, the Plant-Based Building Material Working Group. It's important, but we also ask that you include someone from the hemp industry, because hemp is, as you've been hearing recently, is big on building material, hempcrete, hemp wood. They should be on that, as they've gone far ahead of the department even on the knowledge with regard to hemp-based building materials, industrial hemp. This is the bill I was referring to earlier when I said we would like to establish a sustainability advisor within the department to handle these kinds of measures. And the SR 24 position would require a $71,000 salary, and they would be part of the working groups that we've been talking about. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. Available for questions.
Thank you. Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition and Climate Protectors Hawaii.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Ted Boland on behalf of the Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition and the Climate Protectors Hawaii. We think this is a great bill. It is an opportunity for Hawaii to lead on with some green jobs on an industry that is important for decarbonization for climate change. And that's why the Climate Protectors Hawaii and the Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition is involved in a bill on agriculture. There are things like clumping bamboo that grows really fast if it has sufficient water and can be made into building materials and substitute for timber. There's hempcrete that the last speaker referred to that can be from industrial hemp that can be used for building blocks. There are biocements that can be made from blue-green algae instead of Portland cement. And all these items are substituting for things that are incredibly carbon intensive: steel, cement, and timber, which sequesters. So when you use traditional building materials, as I've just mentioned, you're adding to the climate problem. When you grow plants with green jobs in a local industry without importing things, you're doing much better in terms of climate, and we need to do everything we can to decarbonize. So this is a great opportunity to build a plant-based industry and provide green jobs while sequestering carbon and other greenhouse gases to help the state achieve its carbon target. I would say that the hemp would be a good addition to the group for the reasons that I mentioned. Somebody on bamboo and somebody on the other industries that we talked about could all help with this study. I urge the committee to pass this bill, and happy to take any questions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. HFB.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bill. We actually just clicked support, but we absolutely support. You hear what everybody's saying. We support, and this actually supports our position that agriculture, although food is extremely important, is more than just food. Food, feed, fiber, fuel, floriculture. And you heard the previous testifiers confirm that. So when we talk about supporting agriculture, it's not only focused on food, which is critically important, but also on all of agriculture, because it is important to the state of Hawaii. We do not have FOMO, and we believe there is some, and I learned what that was just now. And we have, because there's a provision here that the chair, which is CTAR Dean Director, can, I guess, under consultation with the other members, invite other members in. Our concern, I think the chair of the Department of Ag may have brought that up, there is no funding in this bill for the working group. So we do suggest that the committee consider some funding. It is an important group, and you know, the positive outcomes that may come out of this group. But again, without funding, might be a little bit challenging, especially because CTAR is always underfunded. So thank you for the opportunity to provide some oral testimony.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on this measure? Any questions from committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next measure, HB 1525. First testifier is Department of Human Services. Nope, 15. If you have an old hearing notice, there was a measure added. So we're putting it right in that place, so HB 1525. Department of Human Services? Okay. Hawaii Food Industry Association.
Thank you, Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to testify. We are in strong support of both of these measures. This is our #1 priority issue this year. This program has been phenomenally successful at increasing sales of local agricultural products at grocery stores, farmers markets, and other venues. It makes sense from a financial perspective because you can receive a federal match for the money that you're appropriating towards this program. And we really think that this measure is probably the most important measure at increasing our food security and resilience locally, because it will grow the local agriculture sector and it will provide that stable market with matching funds through the SNAP program to grow our local agriculture and make our community more resilient. So we really urge you to pass either of these measures. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next, we have Local Food Coalition.
Good morning, Myung again. Local Food Coalition, we're in strong support of this measure as well as the next one. As the previous testifier mentioned, I mean, in terms of the dollar and the value of local food production to our folks here in Hawaii, I think it'll go a long way. And again, another opportunity to draw federal funds. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Ulupono Initiative.
Thank you, Vice Chair, Chair, members of the committee. Micah Munikata here on behalf of Ulupono Initiative. We stand on our written testimony in strong support of this measure. Just want to highlight a few data points here around the need across our state. We roughly have about 160,000 Hawaii residents that are currently receiving SNAP assistance. Since January 2020, we've experienced a 26% increase in the cost of our food. This definitely heightens the need for us to really make the most with the money we have. As described by HFIA a little earlier, this program actually doubles your purchasing power at participating vendors. $10 of SNAP benefits turns into $20 in which you purchase locally produced fruits and vegetables. I think we've heard of quite a few measures throughout quite a few years, honestly, around how we can help our farmers. And at times we run into some of the Commerce Clause issues. This program is a federal program that allows us to beat that Commerce Clause. We can find ways to incentivize our local production here within the state. Currently, the program supports about 470 farmers across the state and 8 distributors. Local SNAP shoppers at participating Farm Direct retailers increased an average of 531% in their sales from 2019 to 2021. This program has substantial benefit. I just want to make clear what the ask is. The ask is for $2 million within the Department of Agriculture's budget per year as a recurring cost. I know that that's a lot in times like these. I do note that this is a very viable program to support our farmers, to support the needs of our communities, and keep the money here locally. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we have Hawaii Appleseed Center for Law and Economic Justice on Zoom.
Hi, good morning. Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Jordan Smith with Hawaii Appleseed, Center for Law and Economic Justice. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of this measure. I just want to elevate from our testimony that SNAP is really an economic lifeline for Hawaii struggling households. And just this past year, it brought multiple devastating cuts to SNAP participants' purchasing power. Last year, SNAP participants saw the biggest benefit cliff in history with the end of the SNAP emergency allotments, with the average household losing about $82 per month in monthly benefits, and some of our most vulnerable household with Kapuna losing as much as $238. And then on top of that, the USDA recently recalculated its Thrifty Food Plan, which is what it uses to calculate our monthly maximum SNAP monthly benefit allotments, and found, right, using some incomplete data that the price of groceries in Hawaii now is about 20% less than it was before. And so SNAP participants are now seeing a 20% decrease in their benefits on top of the end of the SNAP emergency allotments. So households are struggling and facing the highest cost of groceries in the nation. This bill is an evidence-based intervention to help increase that purchasing power while also having all of the wonderful benefits for our farmers and our health. So thank you so much.
Thank you. HFB.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You have our testimony in support. We are in strong support of this. We won't repeat all of the positives that everyone has talked about, how it's a win-win-win, supports the farmers, supports those that are in need, leverages their buying power. We do want to comment maybe on Ulupono's data point, one of them, where he says 470 farmers. That's a great number. We believe it's higher. We believe almost every farmer and rancher could possibly take advantage of this unknowingly. So again, the impact is huge. But what we did want to discuss is there are many other measures before you this year. We need to support those other measures. We need to provide the investment in agriculture in order for farmers and ranchers to meet the demand of programs such as this. So although we applaud this and support this 100%, let's not forget about the other issues and priorities that agriculture is asking for in order to keep our farmers farming so that they can provide the produce for this program. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. I don't see her in person, but we'll check on Zoom. Peggy Mirza. Or Hi-Fi.
Hello, this is my Peggy mask and costume, sorry. Yeah, Nate Hicks with the Hawaii Public Health Institute. We stand in strong support of this measure. We have families that are in need. They're having SNAP benefits, but oftentimes these SNAP benefits aren't enough to afford the necessary fresh fruits, fresh vegetables that they need. We have the opportunity to help these folks, right? The equivalent of giving a friend or family member in need about $20 and having that magically turn into $40. And not only is it doubling their purchasing power, we're also getting another $20 from the federal government added in as well. And so if we knew we could give a friend or family member money and have the feds double that money, I think we would all do that, and the state has this awesome opportunity to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Hi-Fi. Those are the only ones here to testify. Anyone else wish to testify in this measure?
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Amy Miller here on behalf of Hawaii Food Bank. We are in strong support of this measure. SNAP is one of our most important anti-hunger initiatives, and every dollar is matched. It's similar to Farm to Food Bank. It really helps to get good, healthy, local food to our community in need. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Thank you. Deputy Hawaii Department of Agriculture. We also stand in strong support, and I lean on the testimony provided earlier, but would like to clarify that the administration actually, I think the House should be receiving the GM sooner than later, to increase from the previous 1 million to 2 million request in the executive budget. Thank you.
Wonderful news. Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on this measure?
Good morning, Vice Chair and Chair, members of the committee. I'm Lola Irvin, representing Director Kenny Fink for the Department of Health. So the Department of Health also supports HB 1525, and we do work with the Department of Agriculture and the various partners here because we know that chronic disease is associated with not having access to healthy foods. And in Hawaii, in 2021, only 14% of adults met just the traditional 5 servings of fruits and vegetables that we measure. And with the FDA and their recommendation for a healthy plate of whole fruits, a variety of vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, and dairy, our Hawaii families could use this help so that we can ensure that there's equity and opportunity for those who grow it as well as those who can purchase it and consume it. So thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Thank you. Hawaii Farmers Union United.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Chair, members of the committee, unsurprisingly, Hawaii Farmers Union is also in strong support of this measure. We view it as a critical opportunity for the state to contribute to the expansion of critical social safety nets that provide for so many of our families across the islands. We view it also, as has been said over and over, as a critical opportunity to support the agricultural industry. And we appreciate your guidance for pushing forward this measure and the following one. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on this measure? One on Zoom.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members. Daniela Spoto. Today I'm representing the Hawaii Hunger Action Network, which is a coalition of around 20 organizations seeking to improve food security for the people of Hawaii. We also stand in very strong support of this measure. Our network members really love this bill. We love this program. Obviously, a lot of people do, but we want to emphasize that for our members, we know that the federal monthly SNAP dollars that Hawaii families receive don't actually cover all of their food costs, not even close. When you're trying to stretch your grocery budget, you're going to skip local food, local carrots, tomatoes, sweet potatoes for frozen, canned, and imported substitutes, which are often a lot cheaper. And as one of our network members, Jordan, mentioned, this measure really needs our help more than ever at this moment in time with the recent cuts that we're seeing to SNAP benefits and the ongoing high rates of food insecurity that seem to be not going anywhere. So this bill keeps those federal dollars circulating locally, but it also really helps families in a time when they need it most. So we thank you so much for considering it.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on this measure? Questions from committee? We will move on to the next measure, HB 2771. First to testify is Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Dexter Kishida, Hawaii Department of Agriculture. We stand in strong support. Would like to add that the Green Administration released $450,000 to be applied to the upcoming GusNIP application for the bucks. So I know that there is a need of, I think, of $3 million. And also just would like to thank the philanthropic and private sector who has really carried this program on their back through, and including through the pandemic, to assist Hawaii farmers and Hawaii families to be able to eat fresh local fruits and veggies. And so, as stated, the administration has also requested in the upcoming executive budget $2 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Department of Health. Department of Health. Thank you very much. We have Hi-Fi. Thank you. Next, we have Hawaii Hunger Action Network on Zoom.
Hawaii Hunger Action Network stands on its supportive testimony.
Thank you. Next, we have Hawaii Appleseed Center for Law and Economic Justice, also on Zoom.
Thank you for hearing the bill twice and sending on our testimony.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Kaiser Permanente on Zoom.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair Jonathan Ching for Kaiser Permanente. This is a really important bill. I think, as one of the previous testifiers mentioned, during the pandemic, Kaiser was one of the organizations that continued supporting the bucks, and we find this is critically important, for not just for our members, but for the entire community. So really appreciate Chair, Vice Chair for scheduling, and I know there's multiple measures around this iterations, but just wanted to share how strong we feel in support of this measure, and thank you for hearing it. I know we're approaching a deadline, so thank you very much. Available for any questions.
Thank you, Ulupono Initiative.
Thank you, Vice Chair, Chair, members of the committee. Micah Munikata here on behalf of Ulupono Initiative. Taking this opportunity to highlight just a few more things. Again, really appreciate this measure moving forward, both the previous one and this one. Thank you very much, Chair and Vice Chair, for your leadership on this effort. Wanting to highlight that the need and a lot of attention, obviously, around how the state is going to support a lot of the Maui recovery is going to be important. Wanting to highlight some of the data that's connected to Maui with this program, if I may. As of August 2023, there were roughly 14,540 SNAP participants, or 7,921 SNAP households on Maui Island. This program supports 13 The Bucks retail locations on Maui Island. Those are including grocers, food hubs, and farmers markets, What we've seen over the course of this program since its inception is that Maui is a great opportunity to support local farmers on the island, along with the needs of the community. Food sales driven by the program on Maui Island has increased from $97,000 in 2020 to $768,000 in 2023. That's nearly a 700% increase just on Maui Island. This program has shown this across each of our islands. I just wanted to highlight some of the data points for Maui and how important this program is to continue to support that community that's looking to recover. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony and support.
Thank you. Local Food Coalition. Thank you. Hawaii Food Bank. Thank you. Hawaii Food Industry Association on Zoom.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. We're also in strong support of this measure. I just wanted to take this additional opportunity to highlight that this bill is very important for improving our resiliency, and that it's been a talking point for quite some time that we're trying to double local ag, and this is a great way for us to do that while also receiving a federal match. And just to highlight the fact that farmers on Maui, including Mahi Pono, which was one of our members, were really critical and generous in supporting resiliency efforts. And this program would help other farmers grow their market share so that they can provide a reliable source of nutrition for our communities that doesn't need to be shipped in. So we feel that it does match the existing priority of improving resilience for the legislature this year, and we thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Would anyone else wish to testify on this measure? Thank you. Would anyone else wish to testify on this measure? Okay, we will now move on to HB 2774, HD1. First to testify is Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Thank you. The department, Dexter Kishida, Hawaii Department of Agriculture. The department stands on our comments and in strong support of our fellow departments to achieve the goals stated. Thank you.
Hawaii Department of Education in support, Ulupono Initiative.
Thank you, Vice Chair, Chair, members of the committee, and Micah Munikata here on behalf of Ulupono Initiative. We support the intent of this bill. We do offer one friendly amendment just to maintain the legislative intent of our 2021 Acts 175 and 176. I think we shouldn't look to remove the interim goal for the DOE in 2025. So just there's a request to remove that section that exempts the DOE from the 2025 interim goal of 10%. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Hawaii Farm Bureau. Hawaii Public Health Institute.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. Dennis Chase. I'm a program manager of the Hawaii Farm to School Hui at Hawaii Public Health Institute. We support this bill. It's a very straightforward housekeeping measure to clarify which benchmarks in Act 176 and Act 175 apply to the Department of Education. Under the Act 144, which was in 2022, which amended Act 176, it could be interpreted that the Department of Education had an 18% by 2030 goal. So this bill just clarifies that by 2030, it is the 30% goal in Act 175. Thank you.
Malia Matsuno on Zoom. Thank you. Would anyone else wish to testify in this measure?
Thank you. Vice Chair, Chair, committee members, Hunter Hevelin, still here on behalf of Hawaii Farmers Union. We support the intent of this measure, and it's a long overdue housekeeping correction. We also definitely support retaining the existing goals for the Department of Education, and would also offer, if it were possible, if the titling issues are not overwhelming, that this could be conceivably merged with HB 2129, which was intended to clarify some of the other goals related to these programs, namely to identify that local products that are of a single ingredient should be entirely local in their origin, as opposed to, say, being able to mix in imported mac nuts with other mac nuts, or imported beefs with other beef products. And so if possible, we could see these conceivably aligning into a single bill that seeks to remedy some of the loopholes and some of the conflicts in the existing law. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else wish to testify on this measure? We will now move on to HB 2236. First to testify is Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Dexter Kishida, Hawaii Department of Agriculture. The department respectfully opposes this measure and offers a few amendments. We strongly support the development of our hemp industry, and that is why we are opposing the removing or the abolishing of that fund, especially as we look forward to the rules that cannabis will now be applying. We'd like to ensure that we're able to fully guide the hemp industry through and help them navigate any changes to the industry and really lean on the economic development opportunities, be it fiber or building products, et cetera, that the hemp industry really can develop into. Another area is the Aquaculture Loan Reserve Fund. We'd like to keep that fund as well. It is definitely used to help our aquaculture farms develop and increase in both size and technology. There are two areas that we have no objections, and that is to reclassify the Office of Hawaiian Affairs ceded land proceeds from a trust fund to a trust account. And we also don't object to the Producer Settlement Trust Fund abolishment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have the Tax Foundation of Hawaii on Zoom. Anyone else wish to testify in this measure? If not, I will hand it over to our chair.
Round of applause, round of applause. Yes, I agree. Oh, look at that. Standing ovation? No, I'm just Thank you, Vice Chair. So I'll pick up where you left off, HB 1782 relating to hemp. First testifier we have is Department of Agriculture.
The department stands on our testimony in support of the intent, but we defer to Department of Health.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is DOH, Department of Health.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chairs, committee members. My name is Greg Edwards with Department of Health, Office of Medical Cannabis Control and Regulation. We stand in support of this measure. We do want to thank you for hearing this measure. We are aware there's another measure in the House that's already been heard with identical language as well. We are available for comments and questions.
Mahalo. Thank you. We have one more testifier in support. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 1782? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions? Seeing none, we're going to move on to our next measure, HB 2336, relating to hemp. First testifier we have is Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Dexter Kishida, Deputy Hawaii Department of Agriculture. We strongly support this measure. There are a few things I'd like to point out. First thing, we don't want to create rules that are duplicative. We want our industry to be as streamlined and sleek as possible, but we do need some amendments done. Currently, we feel that hemp should be, all of the normal rules that apply to agriculture should also apply to the hemp industry, no more, no less. In this case, things like pesticide use or buffer zones, et cetera, should still be applicable, and we need that amended. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have Climate Protectors Hawaii.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Ted Boland on behalf of the Climate Protectors Hawaii. In reference to the testimony I gave a few moments ago, hemp is a great potential crop for sequestering carbon, and we urge the committee to adopt this bill in order to help streamline the production of hemp fiber. So thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 2336? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none. We're going to move on to our next measure, HB 2449, relating to manufactured hemp products. First testifier we have is DOA. Thank you. Next testifier we have is DOH.
Good morning again, Chair, Vice Chairs, committee members. Greg Edwards, Department of Health, Office of Medical Cannabis Control and Regulation. The department respectfully requests a small, or we're in support of this measure. The department respectfully requests a small but important change to the definition of manufactured hemp product in order to move forward with the authority given last year in Act 263, giving discretion to the department to add new product forms to the current list of manufactured hemp products. And just as a reminder, manufactured hemp products are a narrow set that are orally consumed or topically applied. Manufactured hemp products do not include fiber products or hempcrete or other industrial uses, cannabinoid-based products. Available for any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Next testifier we have is Tai Chang.
Good morning, committee. Can you hear me? Chairs, Vice Chair, members of the committee, my name is Tai Chang. I come to you today, though, not in my capacity as a cannabis supporter, but actually on behalf of Hempshore Hawaii, which is a company that we also own, which was the first state licensed hemp processor here in Hawaii under the new rules set out by the Department of Health. I'd like to provide comments to House Bill 2449. Our only concern is that, and we'd like to recommend an addition for beverages and edibles, which conforms with the intent of the legislature last year to allow for CBD and cannabinoid products to be sold in the state of Hawaii. The current state of affairs is that the Department of Health has taken over hemp and cannabinoid product retailing and manufacturing. The current hemp farmers are unable to extract and provide cannabinoids for sale within the state unless it conforms with the rules that the Department of Health have set out. These rules do not include edible forms of cannabinoid. It actually specifically restricts cannabinoids as a food adulterant. And so any food such as coffee, gummies, chocolate, candies are excluded for sale. The issue, though, is that there are mainland products that are readily available at gas stations and at hemp and head stores throughout the state that sell manufactured hemp products that are manufactured in California and Oregon and then sold here without any regulation and without any testing. We only ask that the Hawaiian hemp industry can compete at a similar playing field as these mainland companies, and therefore ask that this committee consider this amendment. I'm available for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Next testifier we have is Climate Protectors Hawaii. Thank you. Members, noting that was the last person indicating they would be present or on Zoom to testify. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 2449? Okay, seeing none, we're going to recess before decision making. Recess. reconvening our Committee on Agriculture on our 9:15 a.m. agenda for decision-making. First measure we have is HB 1815 relating to the Agribusiness Development Corporation. Chair's recommendation is going to be to move this out as an HD1. We're going to defect the date, and that's it on my end. Any comments, questions, concerns? Rep. Russo.
As became clear in the questioning, I am concerned about the impact on my district, on my community, so I'm going to be voting no.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1815, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Both Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Cochran.
Aye.
Representative Lowen, excused. Representative Prusso.
No.
No. Representative Woodson. Aye. Representative Ward, excused. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HB 1937 relating to the Department of Agriculture. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1, blanking out all appropriation and defecting the date to July 1st, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none?
Voting on HB 1937, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the presence of all members except the excused absence of Rep. Lowen and Rep. Ward. Anyone voting with reservations? Anyone voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 2130 relating to sustainable food systems. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We're going to adopt Department of Agriculture's testimony to include agriculture operators to be represented in the 11-member working group. We're also going to make some technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. In addition, we will add in DOA's language requiring DOA sustainability specialist positions to be well-versed in Hawaii agriculture at the farm and ranch level and specialists in sustainability. Defecting the date to July 1st, 3000, as for all of the bills on this agenda. Vice Chair, any questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2130, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative Lowen and Representative Ward. Anyone voting with reservations? Anyone voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 2134 relating to agriculture. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We're going to include in the committee report DOA's testimony regarding impacts to the budget priorities set forth in the executive budget, and we're going to defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, and actually we're going to add in the committee report, the 300,000 requested as well. With that, any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2134, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Lowen and Rep. Ward. Is any member voting with reservations? Any member voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to our next measure, HB 2137, relating to the Hawaii Farm to Food Bank Program. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We're going to change the appropriation to general funds for the Hawaii Farm to Food Bank Program. We will take HDOA's recommendation to strike emergency feeding organizations. We're going to blank out the appropriations and insert them into the committee report. We're going to make some technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style, and defect the date to July 1st, 2000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2137, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Lowen and Rep. Ward. Any members voting with reservations or any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 2329 relating to rose ring parakeets. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We're going to blank out the appropriation and insert them into the committee report. We're going to make some technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style, and defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2329, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Ward and Rep. Lowen. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 2335 relating to agriculture loans. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We're going to make some technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style, and effective date to July 1st, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2335, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Chair Rep. Lowen and Rep. Ward. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 2590 relating to food security. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We're going to blank out the appropriations and insert them into the committee report. We're going to make some technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style, and we're going to defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2590, excuse me, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Lowen and Rep. Ward. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 2617 relating to agriculture. Okay, Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We're going to remove lines 7 through 9 on page 2, starting with unless and ending with members. We are going to adopt the AG's recommendation on page 2, beginning at line 19, a new subsection E to read the following. The members of the Aquaculture Advisory Committee shall serve without compensation, but shall be reimbursed for expenses, including travel expenses necessary for the performance of their duties. And then we're going to defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2617, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Lowen and Rep. Ward. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next measure, HB 2619, relating to agricultural biosecurity. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We will have the committee report reflect that DOA has requested $2.5 million to fully implement this bill, and we're going to defect the date to July 1st, 3000.
Comment, Chair, I don't know if we wanted to include the 90 million per the Hawaii Farm Bureau's comments. Noted in the report, maybe.
Okay, we'll note that for our Hawaii Farm Bureau's request in the committee report, along with DOA's. Okay, any other comments, questions, concerns, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2619, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Lowen, Rep. Ward. Do any members have reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 2705 relating to agriculture leases. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1, and we're going to turn this into a study conducted by DOA. Defect the date to July 1st, 3000. And any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2705, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Ward, Rep. Lowen. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to our next measure, 2754, relating to agriculture. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We're going to take the AG's recommendation to add language that identifies this bill as law of statewide concern in the preamble. We're going to add the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development recommendation to add the state sustainability coordinator to the plant-based material working group. We will also adopt Hawaii Farm Bureau's recommendation to include the president of the Hawaii Farm Bureau as a member of the plant-based building material working group. We're going to amend the sunset date of the working group to June 30th, 2026 to allow for input from working group members during the regular session of 2026. We're going to add appropriation language, and we're going to make a technical amendment for clarity, consistency, and style. Lastly, we'll defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none. Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2754, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Lowen, Rep. Ward. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HB 1525 relating to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program incentives. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We're going to include in the committee report DOA's comments, and we're also going to defect the date to July 1st, 3000. And for the CR report, we're including the $2 million request. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none. Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1525, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Lowen, Rep. Ward. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 2771 relating to food security. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as an HD1. We're going to reflect in the committee report the $2 million request by DOA, and we're going to also defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2771, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Ward, Rep. Lowen. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 2774 relating to local agricultural products.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. I'm going to let the Vice Chair give the amendments for this bill.
Thank you, Chair. The Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as an HD2. We will delete the 2040, 2045, and 2050 benchmarks under paragraph 2, 3, and 4 in section 3, that is 302A, 405.6, that is in the farm to school benchmarks. The reason we're doing that is redundancy. It is in procurement law, so only the changes need to be added in the farm to school law. So this will not allow the DOE to be free of their benchmark local food obligations. We're cleaning up the statute, matching the DOE. The DOE benchmarks, again, it is a housekeeping measure, and Chair is also requesting technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Quick question.
Rep. Caruso.
So, Vice Chair, will this then remove the exemption for the DOE that was noted on page 3, line 15? Where it says, provided that the Department of Education shall be exempt from the requirements of this paragraph?
Which section is that?
So it is.
Or what page, sorry?
Page 3, line 15 and 16.
Just one moment. No, this is page 6 and page 7.
So we're not
So
removing
we're
that
not
exemption?
changing the procurement law, the farm to state. HMSO requested that it is in the law and statute for the DOE for farm to state. Therefore, the deletion is only for the Act 175 farm to school, where we're keeping the content that is different. It's still a 2030 goal. They are still required to meet the goals of 2040, 2045, and 2050. So that is section 2, 3, and 4 on page 6 and 7 of the bill.
Okay, members, any other comments, questions, concerns? If not, we're going to move on to vote. Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2774, HD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Lowen, Rep. Ward. Any members voting with reservations?
Chair. With reservations. I'm just still anxious about that
Okay.
exemption from the DOE.
Thank you.
Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 2236 relating to non-general funds. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We're going to take DOA's amendments. We will also adopt DOA's request, adding language to transfer funds in the Aquaculture Reserve Fund to the Aquaculture Loan Revolving Fund to fund future loans and help develop Hawaii's aquaculture industry. We're going to defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2236, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Low and Rep. Ward. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, members, just a few more bills. HB 1782 relating to hemp. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We're going to defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1782, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Lowen, Rep. Ward. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 2336. Chair's recommendation is to move this out, relating to hemp. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1, defecting the date to July 1st, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none. Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2336, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Lowen, Rep. Ward. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 2449 relating to manufactured hemp products. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We're going to also insert language in here to include the terms beverage and edibles under the definition of manufactured hemp products. We're going to also have the committee report recommend that DOH be responsible for providing oversight and regulations of this definition. And we're going to defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2449, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Lowen, Rep. Ward. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, members, we have two bills from Monday for decision-making only. HB 2129 relating to agriculture. Chair's recommendation is that we're going to defer this measure. It still needs a lot of work, and the definitions of single ingredient products need to be defined with more stakeholders involved on this. So we'll defer HB 2129. Moving on to our last measure, HB 2139. So we're deferring HB 2129, just clarifying. And then moving on to HB 2139 relating to invasive species. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We're going to add some language for coconut rhinoceros beetles and little fire ants. We're going to add the $10 million request in the committee report, and we're going to add language for implementation, but leave it on DOA to create the rulemaking for this measure. We're going to defect the date to July 1st, 3000. With any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2139, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Lowen, Rep. Ward. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. This hearing is adjourned.
Aloha, welcome to our joint committee hearing between Committee on Water and Land and Committee on Agriculture and Food Systems. It's Wednesday, February 14th, 2024. We're on our 11 AM agenda in conference room 325. We have one item on our agenda, HB 1923, relating to camps. First, we have Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, chairs, vice chairs, and committee members. Dexter Kishida, Deputy at Hawaii Department of Agriculture. We're offering comments on this bill and really deferring a lot of the technical aspects to those that are much smarter than I. But one thing that the department would like to request or point out is we really fear unintended consequences of bills like this. So if there can be some guardrails that are put in place to ensure that those unintended consequences, like losing ag land, losing more ag land, doesn't happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Office of Planning and Sustainable Development.
Good morning. Katia Balaciano for the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. Similar to the Department of Ag, we also have certain concerns associated with this measure. However, we stand on our testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Boy Scouts of America.
Good morning. Aloha. My name is Blake Parsons. I'm the CEO of the Boy Scouts of America Aloha Council. Thanks for having me here this morning. So we represent about 450 scouts on Maui, about 175 adult leaders. So Camp Maluhia is affected by this. Camp Maluhia has been around for about 100 years. And with scouts, camps are kind of like the heart of our program, right? It's where scouts meet, and it's had a huge impact on the community for a long time. So obviously we do overnight camping, we do our merit badge programs, we have summer camps, we also host community groups. After the Maui wildfires, we hosted 100 Red Cross workers. We hosted several displaced families in times of need. So it's very important to us that we have this camp and have the ability to have it overnight. So we're definitely in strong support of this. Or some sort of fix. I'm not a planner. I'm not an expert on any of this. We've operated a summer camp for 100 years, and we would like to be able to continue having our scouts and the community use it. So thank you for that. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Camp Olowalu.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committees. My name is Rory Frampton. I'm a land use planning consultant from Maui. I was retained by Camp Oluwalu to look into this issue, and I actually did some of the research that led to the drafting of the bill. And this all has come about because of a Supreme Court ruling in 2023 that said you can't issue special use permits to the items that are listed as prohibited uses in the ag district, like drag strips, airports, country clubs, and overnight camps. Historically in Hawaii, there's been a number of campgrounds established in the agricultural district. On Maui, there's 4. On Oahu, there's 3. On the Big Island, I know of at least 1. And so these are all existing campgrounds in the ag district. If you had to, like on Maui with Camp Maluhia, they wanted to expand their dining room, they had to get a special use permit. So they're grandfathered in, but if you change or expand your use, you need to get some type of an approval. And that approval requires going in front of the Planning Commission and having public hearing and notifying everybody. Same with Oluwalu, they had to do the same. Both of those camps have permits coming up in the next year or 2. And if this bill is not passed, then they won't have the option of using the special use permit process. Instead, they would have to change their state land use district from ag to urban. And in most of these camps, they're out in the remote areas, and change to urban is just not appropriate given their context. So we're hoping that this bill can pass, and it would allow just for overnight camps, not drag strips or airports or whatever, but just overnight camps, they could utilize the special use permit process. We're not asking for a free pass or anything like that. We're just saying, can we return to where we were for the last 30 plus years? Which was this discretionary review for campgrounds. Now, there have been concerns expressed by the Farm Bureau and Office of Planning about, well, what if we don't want to lose more agricultural land, so we don't want to open the door to a whole bunch of new uses in the ag district. And one way to address that would be to
just allow this, you could say something like, except overnight campgrounds which existed prior to such and such a date. So you could just say we would allow overnight campgrounds via special permit if they were previously existing. So that wouldn't open the door for a whole bunch of other uses. And frankly, you know, it would be returning to a state that existed for 30 years, and we didn't see any new campgrounds that I could see in Hawaii that ever utilized that process. The only people that have utilized the special permit process are the folks that already have existing campgrounds. So I don't think there's, anyways, I think we could get rid of those fears if we just say it only applies to existing. So I'm available for any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all we have signed up. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? Come on, Brian.
Thank you, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committees. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We did submit written testimony, and we respectfully oppose. And it's pretty difficult when you got to follow the Boy Scouts and oppose. I think the previous testifier spoke to some of our concerns. Again, the bill's asking to allow overnight camping. They listed 8. We don't know what would happen if we did allow it. We have been trying to work with the parties to preserve their campgrounds. Absolutely, we don't want to see those go away. They are in the agriculture district. We don't want to see too much expansion also, if they are grandfathered in, that's going to impact the surrounding farms. Again, we constantly say agricultural lands are for agriculture production. That's a primary use. However, we do want to see a resolution to this. We don't want to see those campgrounds go away. We want to find a solution while also preserving our valuable and limited agricultural lands. So we do respectfully oppose. However, we'd like to work with the legislature to find a solution that works for agriculture and also for these, I guess, 7 campgrounds that may be impacted because of the Supreme Court ruling. Again, thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to provide testimony? Okay. Okay, go ahead on Zoom.
Aloha Council, my name is Ikolu Lindsay. I am calling in from West Maui, and I support everything that Mr. Frampton had stated. And for me to participate in this, it comes from the many groups that I work, the national programs that I work in. And you may know that West Maui and many other places just don't have places for students to stay. So these campgrounds are utilized by many organizations, and I could name them all off, but in the essence of time, just know that the programs that we run are nonprofit organizations that are terrestrial-based, cultural-based, and marine-based programs have a huge impact worldwide with the national and international programs we work with. And this is just my experience within Camp Oluwalu. And to take that opportunity away is just they won't have any other feasible options to participate in these camps. So I'd implore you to try to find a solution that was suggested by Mr. Frampton. And if this is my personal experience, I'm pretty sure there are other peoples that are running similar programs that utilize the other campgrounds. And the other things about these campgrounds is it creates a presence, which means you don't have occupations by, let's say, people that don't have homes. So it does promote safety in those spaces. Thank you for the time. I'm open for any questions. Mahalo.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else wishing to provide testimony? Okay, seeing none. Members, Waterland members, questions? Okay, Ag, questions?
Ag, any questions?
Oh, okay.
Chair, Mr. Frampton, can I ask you a question? Aloha.
Aloha.
Sorry. Thanks for coming all this way.
Yes.
So you said the process will still go through a special use permitting, through Maui Planning Commission. I mean, just speaking towards, Olowalu Camp in particular right now.
That's correct, yeah. And Maui County identifies overnight campgrounds in the Ag District as a special use. So their county zoning requires it, and then the
the state land use, if this passes, would also require that too. So when you have, not to complicate things, but if you have a special use required by the county and the state in Maui, you utilize one vehicle, you utilize the state special permit process. But the short answer is, yes, they'll still be governed by the special permit, which is not an indefinite approval. You have to come back and show that you're meeting the terms and conditions of your permit. So if things are going crazy, there's a way for them to be reviewed. And you're held up to your representations that you said you were going to do when you got the permit. So Camp Oluwalu is going to be looked at again in the next several months, hopefully, if this bill passes. And then same with Camp Malahia. They'll have to go in front of the Planning Commission and show how they're living up to the representations that they made the first time they got the permit.
Okay, and do you know in this, oh, sorry, Chair?
Go ahead.
How do I hear the concerns about more popping up, and you said that you haven't seen any new ones come about. So is this going to prevent that, though, now that this is sort of in the limelight? People go, hey, they're doing it. Let's try it, too.
Well, if you add some language that so that this would only apply to existing campgrounds, I think that would be the way to prohibit new campgrounds from being established. And it would so that you would really just lock in the existing ones that are existing now. And there wouldn't be any new ones in the ag district, even if they tried to get a special permit and they couldn't do it.
Okay, and Chair Leslie,
Go ahead.
how does this affect the sort of the tent cities, tent camps that are up due to the disaster and displaced people? Do you have any thoughts on that, or do you know how this affects that?
Well, anything that's done to address the fire, I believe would fall under the governor's proclamation, in which case you're exempt from the state land use law. So I think that's a whole separate issue that this would not impact.
Okay. All right.
As long as it's officially related to the fire
Sure.
and in response to the emergency.
Okay. Thank you for your time, Anna Kolus. Mahalo, Chair.
Thank you.
Is it a special permit or a special use permit?
I've been saying special use because that's kind of the common language, but under state law, it's special permit. It's a special permit. Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
Thank you. And then are all the camps that you mentioned in your testimony, are they all considered grandfathered? They were in existence prior to the state land use code being adopted?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members, any more questions?
One quick question, please, Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Chair Woodson.
Hawaii Farm Bureau. So would you be amenable to the grandfather clause provision that some of the other testifiers are suggesting that we incorporate into the provision, into the statute?
Thank you, Representative Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. I'll make a long yes. Again, as long as what's there now is all that we see. We haven't seen any impact to agriculture from the current list of campgrounds, so the answer would be yes. We do want to find a solution to support what's going on at these camps.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair.
Questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll go into decision making.
Okay, members, recommendation is going to be to pass out House Bill 1923 as a House Draft 1. We're going to defect the date to the year 3000. And then we are going to amend the language on page 3, lines 19 through 20. So we are going to keep the language that prohibits overnight camps, but we're going to add, provided that overnight camps in operation prior to January 1, 1961, when the land use code was adopted. That's my editorial. So prior to January 1, 1961, may be approved via special permit. So that, I think, would accomplish the goals of the testifiers to preserve the existing camps as well as not allow any further camps. Waterland Committee members, any questions, discussion? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair, House Draft 1.
Voting on House Bill 1923 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Chun. Aye. Representative Gannadin. Excuse. Representative Hashem. Aye. Representative Mizuno. Aye. Representative Morikawa. Representative Takayama. Excuse. Representative Souza.
Aye.
Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Waterland.
For the Committee on Agriculture and Food Systems, same request. Same recommendation, sorry. Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1923, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Both Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Cochran.
Aye.
Representative Lowen, excuse. Representative Peruso.
Aye.
Representative Woodson.
Aye.
Representative Ward, excuse. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members.
We're adjourned. Oh, adjourned.